So what this topic is about today is saving our summers. So, I've been working with people all over the nation about what students can and should do with these summers. So I'm going to present on that for about 40 minutes. And then if you don't mind, as this is going by, I would very much encourage you to take notes, because a good idea is going to go by and it's a spaghetti talk. We're throwing everything on the table. And so something really cool might be mentioned only once in passing. So if you take a note about it, at the end, we're going to ask you to put at least your preliminary thoughts about how you are going to use this summer, how you're going to talk about this summer, which is not the same thing. So give me 1 second here, and we're going to turn this on, and we'll be off to the races. So, okay. All right, so Save Our Summers is our name of the talk, and I just like the symmetry of the Latin exclamation point being upside down and then SOS. I like symmetry. And so the theme is holes. So if you think about summers as part of student development, and of course I do, then if you don't do anything for a whole summer, there's a hole in your development. And you can do lots of different things. You don't have to do any particular thing, but nothing is not the correct answer. So these are examples of holes. I think the hole in the hand is particularly, someone said it was creepy, but I actually like the hole in the hand because hands do things, they make things. Whatever you're going to do this summer involves making and doing. There was a hole in it, but look, there's a ladder coming up out of it. So I actually like that one a lot, although I've had some complaints from people about it. But that's the theme, holes. So everybody had a plan of one kind or another, and then along came the coronavirus and changed people's plans, derailed them a bit. So we're going to talk about that. Employers have been very busy rescinding employment offers, rescinding and canceling internship offers in unprecedented numbers. Sometimes you get even compensation, but it doesn't matter. The thing's canceled. And some people are being told that they may be able to have an internship next year. They might get hired after people go back to work inside offices. So it's all kind of nebulous. And those people who are already hired for something are sometimes told to just figure out what you're going to do with your supervisor, which throws both people that are not experienced or seasoned in this into an endeavor which they have no training for and no guidance. So in some internship programs, as we all know, are going completely online. And the kind of last minute stuff that Reedy's always did evaporated. Just going out and saying, okay, I'm going to help this outdoor experience group by guiding people and teaching them how to track animals. That kind of putting something together at the last minute, a stalwart of liberal arts colleges like Reed kind of stopped. So here's the good news, really good news. It's a fantastic time to be in college. It's a fantastic time to be headed to grad school. So if you are a rising senior and you're not sure if you want to go to grad school, I would apply in this coming year, because you will have that grad school in case this doesn't really get better for a year. It's a wonderful time to be in school, frankly. The other good news is you can do weird stuff right now and nobody thinks it's weird. The rule book got thrown out the window, and so it's really kind of up to you if you want to do something odd, like call famous people, tell them you want to interview them. So here's something to think about. Everyone's in the same boat. So employers and grad schools and research opportunities, they know that this summer fell apart, and they know that students didn't have experiences that they normally would have, and they know that new grads didn't walk right into a good first job. So everybody's in this together. However, I interviewed a NASA scientist about this topic, and he said, well, I'd look at somebody that didn't have experience in a lab, but I'd probably pick somebody else, even if I had to pick somebody from a later year or a prior year. So I do want to say, I don't want you to think this doesn't matter at all. Just because everybody's in the same boat together doesn't mean the boat's not sinking. How's that? Is that too scary? I hope it's not. Alice, forgive me. Okay. So I want to bring this up because I think it's important. There is more than one right answer, so don't freak out. It's actually going to be fine if you do nothing. Sometimes I think I'm just too action oriented. I read an entire article today that said that staying home and trying to work on how you feel about things is really a good enough use of your time. So there's more than one right answer. You don't have to do any of the things that we're going to present today. Okay, some of these techniques require that you be pushy and that you use basically kind of like a sales technique to get people to interact with you. So these techniques are not for everybody. So if I suggest something that you say to yourself, oh my gosh, I would never do that, well, then don't do it. It's not for you. Very few people would be able to do all this stuff we're talking about today. And I had a faculty member say that students need to get used to the sound of no. Because there's a lot of opportunities that the students could easily get in other times, other years. This year they asked for and they're going to hear no. But I actually think that hearing no can be developmental as well. So if you go out and you try really hard and you hear a bunch of no's, that's developmental also. So there's more than one right answer. You don't have to do any of this. Some of this requires you to be pushy, and if that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to do it. And whatever you do, you might hear a few more no's than you're used to. So what are your options? So I always think of the summer as bifurcating into two categories, just absolutely straight two categories. Student number one went home, got really good at Fortnite, took her game to a whole new level. Okay, student two, structured an experience, pursued it. Hold on. Okay, I have to move something so I can see. Structured a summer experience, did something, learned something, and had something to report about it. So both students will be fine. Both students will succeed. The kind of students that go to read will be fine, even if they do get really good at Fortnite. But I would view this as an opportunity. So let's take a look at how you do that. Suppose your opportunity was rescinded or canceled. There's kind of three standard responses to this kind of thing. You can go home and sulk and be, sour about it. You can get mad, or you can call them back. And I think before you let somebody, especially kind of fire you in an email or fire you without a discussion, call them up and say, let's talk this through, okay? Can I do something remotely? Can we restructure this? Suppose you don't pay me. Can we still have interactions this summer where I get mentorship and guidance? Suppose we don't worry about college credit. Now, Reed doesn't really worry about college credit for internships, but many universities do. And then this thing here, when things come back, can I be the first person you call, even if it is during the school year? And then even if they say, no, I'm not going to do any of this, then just say, well, if you don't mind, I'll keep in contact with you over the summer. And then every 3 weeks or so, send them a note. I'm doing great. This is what I'm doing. If something opens up that I could help with, let me know. So don't disappear on them, no matter what. Okay, so the summer came along. It was different than you had hoped. So here are the three things you can do about it. You can create experiential development of your own design. You can learn something, or you can pursue enrichment. And so when I say learn something, I really mean learn something directly related to your academic and career development. And enrichment can be a much broader topic. So these are your three options, provided that you're not interested in improving your Fortnite game only. So let's take a look at these in order. So we'll start with creating experiential development and squeezing a lemon to make lemonade, or at least to do something with the limits. Okay, so there is still hiring out there. Handshake has 500 companies that are hiring. I dug through some of these. Some of them are cool and some of them are not. So, but they're hiring, and I'll give them that. So if you're a graduating senior, this is a place to get started. Most of the programming today is for juniors and sophomores, but if you are a graduating senior, there's some opportunity out there. So here's what is at the end of this talk, the question of what are you going to say that you did with this summer. And so Parker-Dewey is a company that does micro internships, and their CEO says, companies will look at what you did during this time period. How did you better yourself? How did you take advantage of this situation? So I think that will come up. It's going to be, in 10 years, people will say, what did you do with the pandemic summer? Hopefully there's only one of these. So one thing you can do is build your own internship. And this is a time, my friends, when it is absolutely appropriate to pull the nepotism card. So if your mom owns a PR company, or your dad owns a design company, or your cousin owns a trucking company, I don't care what it is, it's time to call them up and say, look, I got to put something together for this summer. Let me build my own internship. I'll design it. I'll interact with whoever you assign me to, and I'll make it work. So that's one of the things you can do. So take responsibility for structuring a remote internship. Now, internships, there's a couple of mismatches between employers and people in internships, students in internships. The biggest mismatch is that employers don't know what students don't know. And what students don't know is actually the culture and mores of activity in a business and organizational setting, whether it's a nonprofit or a corporation. So what does that mean? It's that you don't know how to interact with people. You don't know how to deal with an irate customer. You don't know how to deal with those weird things that your coworkers do. You don't know how to interpret the goofy, odd things that your boss says. All of that stuff is what you don't know. And weirdly, employers think you do know all that. They think it's, common knowledge and common sense. And as Voltaire famously said, the problem with common sense is it's not so common. So, but the thing you do know that they don't know that you know is you know how to do work remotely. You know how to do work on your own, and they don't know that you can do that. So you know Slack, and you know Microsoft meetings, and you know how to use Zoom, and you know these things, and you can use Skype. So as you're structuring this, remember what you don't know. You don't know how to interact with people in an office setting. So how do you get that going? Interact with your mentor pretty much daily. I would recommend that you keep office hours. So you don't have to keep 8 hours a day, but certainly think about keeping 4 or 5. And at the end of the summer, it's not about credit. It's not about being paid. What you need is a resume item. And I'm going to return to this at the end. You need a resume item, and you can create a resume item out of as little as 1 day. And I'll show you how. But the usual successful internship involves these 3 things. A finished project that you can point to and say, I did that. That's super important. So if you take an internship and they don't have that, you create your own. If they have you doing ongoing work that doesn't involve any kind of a project that has a plan, an execution, and a report, then you create that in your internship. Number 2, a letter of recommendation. Be brazen, ask for it. The last 10 days you're there, ask for it every day. And an offer of extension, repeat, or hire. So if you're successful in an internship, you normally would get an offer of hire for the next year, an offer to repeat the internship, or sometimes an extension right into the school year. So that's build your own internship. What about micro internships? What are they? They're just little bites, okay? 5 to 40 hours of work, paid usually, professional assignments that are similar to those giving new hires or interns. This is an article from Forbes, and that Parker-Dewey is one of the people that set these up. And down on the left bottom, you can see Inside Sherpa. It's another company that sets these up. So the University of Wisconsin put together an awfully good white paper on internships. So if you just go University of Wisconsin and internships, you can find that white paper, and it has tons of links to other organizations that do stuff like this, okay? So next, let's talk about people whose summer research opportunities exploded due to the coronavirus. If you're in STEM, it's very normal for the summer between junior and senior year for you to do a summer research experience at a major R1 university. But even if you're in history or anthropology, it's very likely that you're doing these things too. So what happens when they get canceled, as many of them were? Well, I have to give you some news from the faculty. Faculty are telling me that they have their own challenges. Their research projects are frozen. Their budgets are frozen. So before you ask a faculty member for something this year, put on your empathy hat and realize that they have issues of their own. So don't be shocked if they say, I don't have the bandwidth to take on something new this summer. I had a faculty member tell me I might do something for a student I know, but this summer I definitely wouldn't do something for a student I didn't already know. So how can you help them? Well, item number 4 on this, actually it's item number 3 underneath faculty have their own challenges. Offer to help them by being a test pilot on coursework the faculty member is migrating to online platforms. So that would be actually useful. A faculty member could be approached that would never talk to you about anything else. They might go, yeah, I could use that. And ask them if they would be an informal advisor on a project that you devise yourself. Say, I don't need an independent study. I don't need credit. I just want to do something and say you were my advisor on it, my supervisor on it. And if they like you well enough, they might take that role on if they already know you. So when you do go talk to faculty about replacing a botched, rescinded, canceled research summer, bring ideas in the door. Bring a menu of ideas in the door, and don't just walk in and say, how can you help me? I'm in trouble. I don't have anything to do this summer. No, come in the door with ideas and ask for their help in sorting through those ideas, and not all of them, of course, requiring their input, their investment. Okay, so, all right, you need to be reasonable. I already said this. If they don't know you, it's probably not going to happen. I don't mean to be cold and rude, but that's actually just a fact. Okay, so, but this is a hot tip. Okay, consider reaching out to current grad students, which you can find online rather easily, and ask them for their advice. Prepare a structured interview. Just, go out and try to interview like a lot of them. You're going to interview 12 grad students in applied physics. Okay. So use a structured interview, ask them for advice, and ask them if they would mentor you over this summer in your endeavors to develop over the summer. And this is something that you got to realize. They got to come up with something themselves at the end of the summer. What did you do last summer? Well, I mentored this really cool student from Reed College who had these ideas about theoretical physics, and I guided her research for the entire summer and reviewed her final paper that she wrote. Okay, so they need this too. So this is where you might find a more welcome response than faculty themselves. So here's a menu. If your summer research project was canceled, it's a menu. Ask again to structure your own project. Redesign something that suits your discipline and focus, but can be done remotely. Take a massive open online course or sign up for summer school classes that are focused in your field. If you're taking summer school classes between the junior and senior year and you're going to grad school, it's not my recommendation that you use summer school to experiment. Go deeper into the thing you want to do in grad school. You can take, I don't know, Hungarian language next year. So MOOCs are free. So if you're trying to find something cool to do that's not expensive, a lot of MOOCs are free. Massive open online courses. You can do a lit review. A lit review is a response to this summer that was proposed by many, many people. So the NASA scientist that I did speak with is not going to be impressed by the lit review alone. So next line down, you'll see, do a whole research proposal. So a whole research proposal is a presentation of the problem, the lit review, and the methods for an experiment or intervention. So if you take it to the proposal level over the summer of the pandemic, then those of you that will be rising seniors, you're going to be halfway done with your Reed thesis. That's one thing you can do. But also you can go ahead and execute that project in the school year. And that's what my NASA scientist said he was waiting for. He needs to see something that actually happened, but you can use the summer to not lose time and go ahead and prepare, an entire proposal. Over here on the left, ask a professor if she has data from old projects that are not fully analyzed. Just say, if you have some data you always wanted to run new dimensions on it, be happy to do it. You can write a theoretical paper instead of an applied research project. And you can write a grant proposal. You need faculty guidance to do this, you guys. Reed has a couple people can help you with this. A National Science Foundation GRFP, Graduate Research Fellowship Program. This is a big deal. If you win one of these, you have a ride to grad school. So that's the reason. It takes a while to do these. It might take you the whole summer to do it correctly. You can do problem sets. This is something that's very popular at places like MIT. They have problem sets like case books, and you would just run through them and do the best you can. And then there's some sources for data. This is one, but there's a bunch more, and I have them listed later on. So if your summer research project was canceled, and remember I was asking you to take notes. Here's why. I'm throwing these up. There's 10 a slide from here on out. So if you like something, write it down because we're going on to other things. The next thing you can think about doing is doing something topical, which means addressing the issue of COVID-19 and coronavirus directly. So what would that look like? Do a data analysis project using Worldometer, CDC, or WHO data. Source data from scientific sources and analyze the effectiveness of interventions, mitigation, treatment, and care in outliers like Sweden, South Korea, UK, US, Italy, Spain, which are all in a cluster together now, with a sliding time factor, and create an infographic like that stuff you see at Worldometer. So just show your capacity to not only massage data, but create a visual presentation of the data with a time slide. Analyze the quasi-scientific commentary that's in the media on the rate of fatalities. So this example would be misstatements of estimated infection, verified infection or not, and community transmission. You could look at hours and hours of a videotape of certain political leaders botching these terms and try to trace it down to effect elsewhere in the community market. I saw this done, design a ventilator made from commonly available parts. Some engineering grad students did this. They found everything. It wasn't very small, but it did work, and it was stuff you could buy pretty much anywhere. Analyze known infection patterns and stratify risky occupations. We're paying a lot of attention to nurses and doctors, but we're not paying much attention to truck drivers, grocery clerks, postal clerks, janitors. And then make your findings dynamic based on various preventive measures. That's an example of going topical. Design, this is my favorite one, and I think Susie recommended this, I'm not sure. Susie Wren, Dr. Wren. Design a research project to study students' attitudes and opinions about remote instruction. What works, what doesn't, and why. How faculty can improve remote instruction, and student perceptions of value of that instruction, and institutional perceptions of the value of using that instruction. So that's going very topical right up to the minute. All right, next. What about learning something in your field? And that's what differentiates 2 from 3. They're both learning something, but 2 is learning something focused and in your field. Okay, so what can you do to upskill so that you come out of the summer with skills you didn't have at the beginning of the summer that employers and grad schools will value? Okay, so that's the question. So you got informal schooling. So here's some examples of informal. YouTube, TED and TEDx, those you can get lost in those, but you could also design something very structured. LinkedIn Learning, formerly Linda, that's a 1 month free, but I think they're actually doing it 2 months now if you're a student. Coursera offers some free MOOCs, and some of them are from very prestigious universities that you can put on your resume or CV. Zoom training for educators at zoom.us. And here's 3 or 4 more. These are just big articles on how you can learn at home. And what are you going to learn? I got it in a later slide, but as examples, but informal schooling. I also like the idea of picking up a second language or becoming more fluent in one. Maybe you know a little bit of Spanish and it's time to become fluent in Spanish. Maybe you know a little bit of German. It's time to become fluent. Babbel is $6.95 to $12.95 a month. There's really no reason not to do this. And so you could pick up a language from Babbel, and you can use other materials and sources too. And you can set up your own conversational trade with somebody in another country to practice your conversational skills. And that also becomes something you can report that you did. And you can take American Sign Language training online for free. There's many places that allow that and pursue that. So here's examples of the kind of stuff you could learn. ArcGIS, Geographical Information Systems, I don't know much about it, but it's a way to take data and tie it to GIS. Python and R, you can learn these at clouddatascience.org, Coursera, edX, Udemy, Pluralsight. And then Masterclass is something a little bit higher end. You can learn everything in there from gourmet cooking to how to improve your chipping and golf. So there's lots of options. Many of these are free. But again, at this section, I'm really talking about you learning something related to your academic interests, not just enrichment. So what about formal schooling? Formal schooling is something that college students have used summers for forever. Interestingly, many grad programs and even undergrad programs have suspended their deadlines. So when you go online and you see that the deadline to apply to enter graduate school at an MBA program was, let's say MBA program might have a deadline of February 10th. Well, then you go online and you find out that it says February 10th, but you call the school and they're still taking applications. So you should approach schools, those of you in particular who are seniors who would like to jump into a grad school, you should know this. But even summer opportunities are, the deadlines don't mean anything right now. And nobody knows what is going to happen. As a matter of fact, I talked to a school yesterday. They only decided to do their summer semester online yesterday. They didn't make that decision until yesterday. So applications are up at some places. In the long run, they'll be up everywhere, but right now they're up some places. Summer school enrollment is up 400% at Tulane University. So it doesn't mean you can't get in there. It'd be better than doing nothing. And it's a great way to stay on track too. So if you're looking at your read schedule and thinking, wow, I take all these classes, maybe you can knock out something in a summer to keep you on track to graduate on time. So don't worry about deadlines. Next, let's talk about creating your own learning and development experience, creating your own. So think about starting a company or a service related to your academic area. I talked to a young man, he was a high school student who started a ACT and SAT coaching company. And so he's a brilliant young guy. I said, maybe they're not going to have ACT. He said, it won't matter because I'm going to spend the summer training people how to take these exams. It doesn't matter to me whether they take them or not. And he's doing the whole thing for free. He's just doing it as a pro bono deal at a local high school with a lot of students that can't afford to pay for this kind of thing. He's doing it for them and tracking his efficacy compared to norms. Do a white paper. A white paper is an exhaustive investigation of a topic. So an example of a white paper, the most classic one I can think of is a PR company in Seattle did an investigation of the legal meanings of the words organic and natural in all 50 states and federally. So that's a white paper. That's a big deal. You could spend your whole summer doing something on that. Interview everyone in your field. Right now, people they don't have the same screens up that they normally have. So if you call a CEO, normally there's people between you and that CEO. But right now there may not be. The CEO may answer her own phone. So reaching out to people, if you have any connection with them, family connection, read connection, I don't know, maybe you're both in the same ashram, you may be able to get through to very important people that normally would be screening calls from college students. Design and produce a website, any kind. Negotiate to rework data, we covered that already. Department of Education, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Census, National Institutes of Health have tons of data that's actually public. So dig around and find some data that you think is interesting and see if you can find a new way to analyze it. This bottom one is not practicable. Since the time that I first wrote these slides, all hospitals have banned visitors of any kind. So you can't get into a hospital lab. That's not viable at this time. almost everywhere that I know. Write a grant, do an independent study supervised by anybody, including your cousin. You know, this is one of my favorites. Spend the summer going to doctoral dissertation defenses as an audience member on Zoom. I love that. If you want to learn how to get a doctorate, go to defenses. You'll learn how to do it. You'll learn what matters and what doesn't and what they say. So that'd be a really smart, intelligent, fun thing to do, to go to doctoral dissertation defenses. These are announced, and you can also write to the departmental secretaries and ask to get access to the schedule. And then virtual tours. I started out learning about virtual museum tours, but it turns out there's a tremendous number of virtual tours out there. There's virtual tours of tourist stuff, and of course museum tours. And so building an annotated catalog related to your area of academic interest would be a project for a student that would be really valuable. Okay. Put up some YouTube stuff. You don't have to start your own channel. And please, I'm not talking about being an influencer, or I'm looking for something way more substantive. So here's some examples. Maybe you could do a talk on how to teach the concept of infinity to first graders, how to create a chemistry lab out of common household items, American Sign Language for beginners, applied philosophy. What would classical thinkers say about these contemporary problems? So you can make a YouTube talk about something that you want to either get employment in or grad school in, to show that you're a sophisticated person in these areas. I like that one quite a bit. And then I want to draw everything I've said down to like 2 pieces. Ask a question and then go out and answer it. A friend of mine is a scientist and he supervises doctoral students, and he says, we spend 2 years teaching them this. Just that's the only thing we do. 2 years we tell them this, and then they go do it. Ask a question and answer it. We just have about 2 minutes left of the talk. So pretty soon I'm going to be asking you to contribute your summer plan. It's a proto plan. It's not, there's no test. Nobody's going to criticize your plan. But in a moment, I'm going to ask you to write your plan down in the chat box and submit it. So what about pursuing enrichment just for fun? Citizen science projects are something you can do. If you're a science person, there's lots of these. The classic example, this is only one example, is bird surveys. They always need bird surveys, and there's organizations that are waiting for your survey right now. Pick some author and read everything they've written. My 2 examples are Dorothy Parker or Cicero. I like Dorothy Parker. I like Cicero. I could spend a summer reading them. Or work on something outside your field. Now, if you were doing some of these things and they were inside your field, that would be back and learn something. It wouldn't be enrichment. It'd be learn something to develop in your field. But if this is outside your field, you can still do it. Foreign language, learn a musical instrument or relearn piano. Maybe you had piano for 7 or 8 years a long time ago. Med schools love musicians because it shows discipline. So you might think about that if you're pre-med. Learn to program, even if it's not a requirement for your career direction. Do hundreds of hours of Tai Chi using online videos or yoga or whatever else like that you'd like. And do community service, for example, helping elders with shopping and delivery and daily wellness checks. So these are just some ideas. Those of you who are interested in life sciences at all, or people or humans, you could pursue EMT certification, Red Cross certification, CPR, first aid, life saving, and heart saver. These are usually free in most communities, and you start out online. So this is something you might pursue. Put in a victory garden, dig up a corner of your yard and put in some vegetables in case we have a breakdown in the food supply, and learn to can fresh vegetables. So these are examples of enrichment. You need to come out of the summer with a resume or a CV item. I don't mind if you have a lost summer, but don't accidentally have a lost summer. Have a lost summer because that was your intention, not because you didn't think of something to do. So I don't really need to see lost summers. That's the point of the presentation. And I guess I want to give this here as an example of what you could do if you just could. Real estate is actually an essential service, so all these things are still open. So I'm going to call on a student to read this example. Andy Xiao, will you read this whole thing?
Sure. Zenith Commercial Real Estate, New York, summer 2020, site review. Toward top New York City commercial real estate brokerage, learned of economic development services available through the brokerage and through allied New York State agencies. Provided feedback on marketing campaign and advertisement piece focusing on high net worth, ultra high net worth, and family offices of investors from Singapore, China, South Korea. Attended pitch meetings for a sales side broker, attended negotiation session for $50 million Manhattan property.
Thank you. So this is an example of going to work with your cousin. We don't know whether this person did this every day for 6 weeks or did it one afternoon. And it doesn't really even matter. What this does is it gives the student a resume item. So I want you to come up with something like this, whether you put 6 weeks into it or whether you put an afternoon into it. And that's the point. I want you to be able to answer this question: what did you do with yourself the summer of 2020? So we're going to give you 2 minutes to write down what you're going to do and throw it in the chat box. And so I'll leave this up actually. So throw it in the chat box and we'll take a look at those. After you put yours in, you can watch other people's flow by. And then Nate will come back on and take the program on to the next level. So 2 minutes. Nate, I see that people have already logged everything in, so I turn the talk over to you and I'll stop the screen and it's your ball game.
Hey, thanks, Don. That's actually really cool looking at all the things that people are typing in there just to see what people are talking about doing. Thank you so much for your presentation right now, Don. And right now we're going to move on to the next portion of today's event. We're going to go on to a panel discussion and question and answer. I'd like to welcome, we're going to keep Don Asher with us, and I'd like to welcome Susie Wren, Associate Professor of Biology.
Hello.
Hey, Susie. Alice Hara, Associate Dean of Students and Director of CLBR. Hey, Alice.
Everybody.
And Izzy Hoff, one of our student staff in CLBR, a peer career advisor. Hi, Izzy.
Hi there.
Okay, folks, go ahead and take it away. If we have any questions that come up that people want to type, I can pick them out of the Zoom group chat. Otherwise, feel free to unmute yourself for a moment and ask a question. And feel free to chat me directly too if something gets lost. I'm going to give it up to the panel right now.
I was here just to answer questions. I have nothing really specific to say. I'm a professor of biology here at Reed, if you didn't know me already. And yeah, I just wanted to help students figure out what they're doing this summer and come up with ideas, things to do, and how to do them.
I'm here to answer how the Center of Life Beyond Reed can help you out, and also just so grateful to Don Asher for proposing this several weeks ago, and Susie jumping in on it, and Izzy joining us, and Nate leading it. So that was really interesting, Don. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and similarly, I don't have much prepared to say, but I'm here to answer questions as a fellow student and as somebody who has worked with CLBR during these past couple of weeks remotely. So feel free to ask away, and yeah.
I have a question.
Great.
I am a senior who's just graduating right now in the history department, and I had been planning to apply to graduate schools in history for fall of 2021. I'm kind of intrigued by the idea that deadlines don't matter as much right now. I'm wondering, Alice, if you have an opinion on whether it's smart to try to jump ahead now that I do have my thesis done as a writing sample, which is part of why I was waiting.
Yeah.
To try to jump ahead and do that for the fall of 2020.
Yeah. Well, Don, I'd love your feedback. I mean, I would say, Austin, that's great. And you should do as Don had suggested, call them up and make sure that the deadlines or that they're accepting. I think one of the reasons is that after you finish a couple of years in grad school, the economy is going to recover and you're going to come out with a graduate degree, as opposed to maybe spending the next couple of years sort of struggling and finding, you know, some smaller pieces of work. So I would encourage you to do that. Don, Susie, what do you think?
I've not talked to graduate schools to know if they're accepting students early. The other thing I would say, though, is if you start now working on your applications, you'll be ready for the regular deadlines. That, you know, if you were applying to graduate schools for 2021, you should be starting right now. And to try and throw together an application in time to try and get accepted this fall, I think would be problematic. That it takes a lot more than work to put together an application. My thought.
Sure, thank you.
I had a question that might be directed toward Don. My name's Delaney. I'm a rising, I guess I'm rising into my senior year now here, which feels weird to say. I'm a biology major, and I guess I was wondering, your talk seemed to be really hopeful toward students using their time toward kind of non-income based practices to further your ability to get future in employment. And I was wondering what your suggestions, besides when you touched on Handshake, what were some other options that you would encourage for students that are unable to use this summer as a non-income supporting time?
Okay, so you had an income supporting opportunity and evaporated, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, not just in my case, but I mean, I feel like a lot of students, we've had internship or job opportunities fall out that were student-based opportunities that were only supposed to last a few months. So what do you suggest for students who can't take on full-time work right now that they're trying to still maybe pursue school in the fall?
I'm gonna take a stab at this, and I'm gonna turn it over to Alice. But I don't have a magical bullet for this. You know, the kinds of things that are hiring that pay are not very developmental. It's things like Grubhub, and you know, there's still Uber drivers out there. I don't know if it's very smart to be an Uber driver, but that's about the only thing I can think of, and I feel kind of lame sending you in those directions. It's very difficult to find a position right now of any kind, and I think you might spend 6 weeks finding something that's developmental and pays. I mean, you know, you could. I have some other materials on the hidden job market. If you email me directly, I could send those to you. And it takes, you know, I'm doing a presentation for another school. We're talking about setting up a war room where you just make looking for work a 6-hour-a-day job. But that's just to find employment. That's not to find developmental employment. And so that the main, if you did something developmentally this summer. And I showed you that one example that was only a couple of days, that New York City real estate agency. I think you can make making money a separate issue. And I don't know if there's anything for income replacement. I'll turn it over to Alice. Alice, how can we help Delaney? I really feel inadequate to the question.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. One is almost every sector has segments that are doing well and segments that are struggling. So if you take, I don't know, Don, if this was from you, but if you take like the wine industry, like anybody who's tied to tasting rooms, that business is tanking. Anybody tied to wholesale, that business is going up. So I think working with us, coming to Center for Life Beyond Read and meet with an advisor, and we can help you think about which segments of the market are actually upticking. They're posting a lot in not only Handshake, but in MaxList, Vault, and Indeed. So I would use a range of databases that you're looking at, and we can help you get connected with all of those. And then finally, using kind of Don's idea about where you approach faculty with something. Your alumni directory, first of all, your alumni base from at Reed is like, you have a smoking alumni base. And a lot of people are well positioned to potentially help you, even if they don't have full-time jobs available, proposing some sort of a project. We just had a student propose a project reading manuscripts to a publishing house and was able to get a temporary part-time position doing that. So let us help you try to connect with and consider proposing projects or project-based work. So those are some ideas. Yeah, Susie?
I mean, it's, you know, not a lot of money, but I also think thinking locally, you know, and like your neighbors have kids who are at home and they just need somebody to sit in the backyard and watch them. I mean, I know you're like beyond babysitting, but, you know, things like that can bring in some income that might then free you up to do some of the other things that Don was talking about. You know, and yeah, people don't want to send their kids to a whole daycare where they're surrounded by 20 kids, but they might need somebody to sit in the yard and watch them, or take them down to the park, or do something that works. You know, if you're a scientist, say you'll take them on a bug safari, you know, teach some history. There's a bunch of high school kids who just lost the last half of their semester also. You know, they are going to be applying to colleges. You all know how to apply to colleges. So you can maybe get some extra work helping students, you know, apply to schools, or tutoring them because they didn't do well in the last semester because they weren't, you know, checked in or something. So, you know, that's not a great job that's going to pay really well, but it might be enough to kind of pay the rent if you're sharing your house with enough people.
Yeah.
I really like that homeschool teacher thing. People are desperate, and you might actually find significant funding if you got the right family interested in you taking over homeschooling from a parent. I've got a parent that makes $365,000 a year, and she's going nuts. She says,
Yeah.
This is just not something I can do. And she only has one child. Imagine if you had 3 or 4.
But I think you're still going to need a lot of the skills or approaches that Don talked about, because people's first reaction is going to be, no, you know, our family is this insular. So you're going to have to talk to them about what you really can offer to them and sell them something, you know, that's because you're in the neighborhood, because you are a Reed student, because you are a history major. Figure out what it is that makes you unique, and also find your client who is a perfect match for you. That I think that sort of thing is very critical right now. People don't trust everybody, right? So you want to get trusted.
That's a good point.
Right. I think that's super interesting you said that. I actually right now for the last couple months have been like solely supporting myself on being like a science tutor to basically like a plethora of students.
Yep.
So yeah, that absolutely is like just kind of I wanted to throw it out there to ask kind of on the bigger scale, because I know I'm not the only student struggling with trying to find income in this kind of digital based world, but the fact that I'm just Zoom tutor students for an hour a week, and I have quite a few of those, have been able to support like what I can actually help teach. Like setting myself up that way has been good, I guess.
Great, thank you, Delaney. That was awesome. We have another question here from Narissa. This is probably for Don, but maybe not just. It's, how would I gain access to dissertation defenses? And what questions could I ask grad students, and how can I get in contact with them?
Okay, so I'll do the second part first. Grad students are super easy to find. So you just go to the Department of Anthropology at the University of Wisconsin, you look at the faculty members, and they will have their advisees listed. And you click through to grad student websites now. So that's all grad students and postdocs as well. They're really easy to find. And they often have, I would call them almost goofy websites. They show their beer they're making and stuff like that. They're really personable. And if you're, a decent human being, they will interact with you. So that's the easy part. As far as finding the dissertation defenses, I would call up department secretaries and ask them, don't call them secretaries, departmental administrative managers, and ask them, how would you learn about the dissertation defenses? And that they will tell you, it's not a secret. Say you're a student, lay out your deal. You're not a stalker or a weird person. Susie, did you have to add to that?
I did. I would say Twitter. Twitter is like the academic, everybody is on there. So, and everybody retweets other things, right? So you don't have to follow every grad student, but figure out who in your field is the person who retweets everything, I can name a few of them in science, and you'll just see, I see every day 5 or 10, announcements of this thesis defense is happening orally at this time, and then you have to direct message them in order to get the password and the Zoom code for it. But they're happening all the time, and all of the higher up faculty members are retweeting things from graduate students they see, so they're popping up everywhere. So that's and I think they're letting everybody, if you tell them you're a Reed student, they'll believe it. It's not that they're filtering who's allowed to see them. They're just making sure there's no Zoom bombers there.
Just for protocol, Larissa, you're not supposed to ask questions until the chair turns it open to the public. So, the committee gets all their questions in first, and they'll literally say, do the members of the community have questions for this candidate? Yeah. So you wait your turn.
I had a question about summer classes, and my question is whether we should be, if we're taking a class that isn't required for Reed graduation at all, should we be leaning towards taking it as a pass-fail course, a credit, no credit, a sort of thing, or should we be leaning more towards taking it as a letter grade? And at what point do we need to reach out to Reed and get kind of acknowledgement for taking that course?
So, you should, if you can, get in contact with your academic advisor and also whatever course you're planning to take, the chair of that department. So if, maybe you're a sociology student, but you want to take a history class, you will need at Reed, the chair of the history department to sign off and say that that's an okay course. And I would recommend doing that before you take the course if you really do want it to transfer. You can do it after the fact, but there's no guarantee that it will transfer. If you get an email ahead of time that says it will transfer, then it will. When you transfer courses, those grades don't count toward your Reed GPA. So they show up on your transcript. And I think it would be a discussion that you would have with the professor at that school, how they're doing their grading and whether they're offering credit, no credit sorts of things. But Reed doesn't deal with the grades you get from another school. We don't count them. They show up on the transcript from that school, not our school. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
And if anybody has any questions, don't be afraid to just speak up. It's okay if we talk over each other. It's going to happen.
I would say the faculty have talked about this, and we are, in the past, we often haven't approved a lot of online courses, like the MOOCs don't really count. But because a lot of the state schools and community colleges are going online this summer, we will be accepting transfer credits for online courses. Probably still not the MOOCs, but that's why I say to get approval ahead of time. If they are from an accredited university and they count toward credit at that university, we will accept most online courses.
Izzy, why don't you talk about your video that you made and what kind of content's in it and how people could find it?
Izzy, so actually, if you could put that on hold for just a moment, we do have another question.
Okay.
This person wants to know, any recommendations on how to approach asking a faculty to do research for like a literature major? Is there still a point in asking, or is it too late?
Are you needing funding for this research, or you're just wanting to do it. I mean, I would suggest writing a outline or like a 1-paragraph summary of what you wanted to do for research and how you were going to do it. So like sort of what sources you were going to use, the sort of methodology of that research, and what the final product was going to be. So basically you're writing a course description like thing for yourself. And then, but I would end it with sort of being flexible, right? Because you might say, these are the things I'm really interested in, this is what I really want to do. And the faculty member might come back and say, well, you know, I'm not ready to spend my summer doing that, but I have this other chapter that I'm really interested in, and I would like that topic done. So coming to them with your idea outlined about how you would do it demonstrates that you can put that project together, but then also showing that you are willing to do a project that they have in mind.
Thank you, Susie. Izzy, you want to talk about? Yeah.
Sure. So, yeah, so that was a reference to a webinar I held, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, which is on the CLBR website. It's on YouTube. And it was on the same topic about what to do with your summer, but as of a few weeks ago. So back then, I was still encouraging people to apply to the Summer Internship Award, which is now unavailable. But something that still is available is the Career Advancement Fund. So that's through CLBR, $500 that students can use that goes towards anything that will advance their careers. So if you are thinking about applying to grad school, now is a really good time to start prepping for and taking your GREs. And that fund could be used towards testing for GREs, for LSAT, for bar, anything like that, or other things that are career related. So like John mentioned, all kinds of like online courses and stuff that you can take that are free online. If there's other stuff that isn't necessarily free, some type of software that you could download that you could teach yourself that could be beneficial to your career in the future, you could consider applying to CLBR's Career Advancement Fund for that funding for opportunities like that. And besides that, a lot of the things I talked about, I just saw a question pop up. The GREs are available right now. I was told that they are offering remote testing. I haven't looked into testing dates, but that information is probably on their website. But as of recently, I heard that they are still offering testing. And yeah, a lot of the other stuff I talked about in my webinar was similar to what Dawn was saying as like personal advancement and resume building that isn't necessarily going to bring you income. So yeah, like reading books, learning about things that you've always been curious about and haven't had time to learn during the week school year. So I hope that's helpful. If anybody has any more specific questions about that kind of stuff, I'm happy to answer.
We've got a question here from Alina. Thank you, Izzy. The question is, how do you recommend we reach out to grad schools that we're interested in?
Well, this is a normal part of getting ready to apply to grad school, in particular for the PhD. So it's very normal in the spring of the junior year and throughout the summer between junior and senior year and for the first 4 weeks or so of the fall to write to prospective mentors. And I want to be really clear what you're writing to them about. You're writing to them about fit and match. So you're not writing to them like, what's the secret to be admitted? You're writing to them and saying, well, I'm interested in Mesoamerican cities, and I've read several of your research papers, and you know, it seems to me that your interests and mine align pretty closely. So far, I've done this, this, and this. Is that the type of background that you would find attractive in a student, or do you recommend that I pursue some additional experiences before I apply? Those are examples of going toward fit and match. So these letters really have, they have 3 parts to them. A little bit of flattery, not much, a very little bit. A lot of flattery. These are not fan letters. And I read sometimes they read like, I want to be you someday. No, here's the right amount of flattery. In the course of my research, I came across your name often. Okay, that's perfect. My advisor recommended that I look at your work, and I'm so glad that she made that recommendation. That's perfect. Your paper was instrumental in helping me design my Reed senior thesis. That's perfect. Now, so three things, flattery, a little bit. Bona fides is the second thing in these letters. Bona fides is Latin for good faiths, but what it really means in this setting is your credentials. So being a Reed student, being involved in undergraduate research, having a super high GPA, winning awards, presenting papers, those are examples of bona fides. Bona fides is optional. Your interest alone is in fact one of your bona fides. So if you have a line in there that, you know, I've been doing undergraduate research under close faculty mentorship for 2 years, that's just all the bona fides that you need. And then questions. And the questions are usually about fit and match, about their research, the direction of their research, and sometimes you can ask them mechanical questions about their program. Here's an example. Would I get to work with you from the first year, or are students expected to take a year of rotations before settling down with a PI? So that's a perfectly reasonable question to ask, because you need to know that going in. Some schools, you're really expected to name who it is you think you're going to work with, and other schools, they're a little looser about it. So asking that question is good. So, and so these are emails, and they're a little bit formal, by which I mean, underneath, well, the subject line is query from a prospective employer, a candidate, prospective student, query from a prospective student. Then in the body of the email, you put their name and their titles, which is like a semi-formal email. It's not like a formal business letter, but don't just go, hey, Bill. I'm looking for, you know, William Johnson, PhD, Distinguished Professor of Material Sciences, MIT, dear Dr. Johnson. Okay, so there's a look and feel to these. And when you write your first one, I'm going to strongly recommend that you get a faculty member to look at it before you push send. After you write 5 of these, you got it. You know how it works. So it's very normal. It's a normal part of preparing to apply for the PhD. And so just to norm this, it's normal for a student applying for the PhD to send out 30 to 40 of these over the summer. So this is quite a bit of work. Susie, I'm sure you can add to this.
I know, I think that pretty much covered it. And I would say faculty are happy to read those emails for you and give you some pointers, just how to structure things, how to keep it concise, putting the important things first. You know, you don't want to tell a whole story. You really just want to give the bullet points almost. And yeah, so we're happy to help you write those, because we've gotten them and we know that we respond well to certain style and not to other styles.
Don, I do want to say we just posted your session on Bound for Graduate Schools on our website just today, so that's also available.
Oh yeah, you know, I was just thinking that. Can you tell people how to find it and stuff like that?
Nate?
Yeah, you can find his Bound for Graduate School presentation that happened on the 7th of April, about a month ago. It is on our website, the CLBR website, on the left-hand side under recorded webinars. You go there and you can find Izzy's presentation, and then you can also find Bound for Graduate School and a couple others, one especially on LinkedIn, I believe, from Bully Welch.
Yeah.
And we should point out, Susie was on that one also and stayed and answered student queries for like an extra hour.
Yeah, and we're preparing that piece separately, so it'll be its own little like section on that webpage.
Something else I thought of regarding like the grad school search process is networking with recent alums. And so a really great tool is the alum directory on IRIS. And so through that, we Reed students can search up other graduates who, like, you can search up by location, by major, by profession. And so now is a really good time to do informational interviews with other alumni who have like maybe gone to a school that you're interested in. So maybe if you find you're looking at a particular grad program and you want to know more about it, feel free to email an alum who you can find through the directory and ask about the program through them. And I would say a similar thing for careers and all kinds of stuff. I think now is a really good time for networking as we're all home and we're all pretty used to the whole video chatting thing now, it's a good time to take advantage of that and start reaching out to people and asking them questions and getting answers that you're curious about.
I was gonna say one thing. You might, if you do want to talk to people, you might send an email and you might offer to like just have a phone chat while they're out for a walk sometime. Is that all the people I know, the faculty are so tired of sitting on Zoom all day long. And I would so much rather just walk my dog and talk to somebody on the phone than sit in my office and talk on Zoom. So it gives them a reason to get outside and do something, and they would probably be happy to have you give them that reason.
I did want to mention real quickly, you asked about paid. The two other things I wanted to say were that we are still approving 30 to 40 jobs a day in Handshake. So do consistently go back in and look. And the other thing that's been interesting is we tend to kind of eschew temp agencies in town, but they're some of the ones who are doing some of the most. I'll share that with you. Bully Welsh has been a particularly good friend of Reed and has come and recruited on campus and seems to have some really interesting employers just looking for temporary part-time folks. So just adding that to the mix.
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities in Handshake, and also employers, if you're looking for something, this probably wouldn't work for trying to find a single summer's worth of work, but if you're a senior preparing to graduate, they do active recruiting like employers do on Handshake, and that is a much smaller pool than LinkedIn is. And employers on Handshake, they can actually like message you if you said yes, that your profile is visible to employers, and you're much more likely to have any of that happen if you fill out your profile in Handshake. So that is one more like just sort of passive, useful thing you can do to help you find opportunities.